So we are recording. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is a model review from the final PowerPoint presentation. So we're going to discuss a quick review of the model. So summarize how the health belief model works. Anybody can start.
I think it's to understand how a person reacts or believes based on, how they perceive if they're susceptible to something or how it'll affect them, and if they don't take actions, it's so. I think it's kind of like a common sense, like we all kind of approach a kind of a problem. Well, if I do that, what will happen? Kind of a model. And then like, if I don't do this, what will happen? So you could put it in context of this class. If I don't join this group, what will happen? Kind of a thing. And I mean, in a nutshell, I think it looks at just beliefs in that way.
Cool.
Kind of our motivation to take action or to not take action.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just, I think what like the steps, like they're all like perceiving, like most of them. And then what's interesting too, it comes down, I'm just kind of looking through the list again because I've memorized them, but kind of applies into what we did last week with like the cues to action as kind of like the attitude, like why they do what they do. And then also like we're also attaching like the self-efficacy, like why, like, what drives certain people to do what they do. And, because some people, like, they're very active about their health. Like, if you tell them that they have a potential risk for cancer, they go out and they get their screenings done and they'll do whatever it takes. And then some people, you kind of tell them about their health is declining, but they don't really change anything. So then, that's like your attitude, what you do in the situation, and then, yeah, like the perceiving of what are the benefits and what are the negatives and what are my barriers. So I don't know, it's kind of touching all our little things we've learned so far. It's interesting.
So like kind of like in the example, there is like an example about tuberculosis, right?
Yeah.
And then if they thought they were at risk or susceptible to tuberculosis, they believe there was a benefit in early detection, right?
Yeah.
Like if they believe that they could have, or like, I guess you could apply it with cancer too, or kind of any sickness. If you believe that you could have it, then you believe there's a benefit to early detection. So it's interesting. Okay, so, oh, there's Landon. So we're just talking, we just barely started, so we're just summarizing how the health belief model works from this week's lesson. So if you have any thoughts, jump in whenever you want. How about, should we discuss the process and how they relate to the stages of the model?
What was the question? Sorry, I didn't really hear it.
Discuss the process and how they relate to the model. The stages of the model. So discuss the processes and how they relate to the stages of the model.
Discuss the process. So like to put that into real world action, like, okay, say that you might be at risk for, like in the example, like a disease or something, like is that kind of what they're saying? Like, what's the risk that...
I think it's a little redundant, but yeah, I think I'm right.
Okay. So like if you feel like you're at risk, like we could say pneumonia, like if you're at risk of pneumonia, how serious is it that you might contract it? And then if you go get like the pneumonia vaccine, like that's a benefit that you might not get pneumonia. Is that kind of like what we're kind of talking about, I guess, is looking at a health outcome and then like a barrier, like what would happen if I do go get the help or the vaccine, that I might get pneumonia because I've already got it, or what motivates me to get it because I can't miss work or financial, like things like that.
Oh, that's a good one. Like what motivates you to get it? Yeah.
You know, is that kind of how we're trying to apply that? I guess.
So.
I think so. Yeah, that makes sense because that was one of the examples in there too.
And there's also this little example in the reading. I was remembering about like getting a mammogram, and like how it was like listing out like so it says like the first point is like recognize that breast cancer screening is effective for finding early cancers, and then it, like on the other side of the graph is like that's the benefit and the responsive efficacy. So I think you kind of each little objective in the process is you're connecting it to like the model itself. So like given the scenario, where does that fit in the model? I think like you're saying. I don't know, that question was worded
Yeah, so in table 3.1 it's like perceived susceptibility, and then the definition is believe about the chances of experiencing a risk or getting a condition or disease, and then application define population at risk levels. So yeah, I think that totally makes sense what you guys said. Landon or Landon and anything.
Like this model, I thought it was how it kind of on like health consequences, and like for example, like the core assumption of this model I kind of do is that like the negative health consequences and conditions can be avoided, and I just think that's kind of interesting how it kind of focuses on consequences that drive and change behavior.
Okay, cool. So, and then the step C is what kind of interventions centered on the process move people through the stages?
I think a good example of that was I kind of went ahead and read the last PowerPoint, but maybe we'll just touch on it again in the end. But it kind of went through, it was a scenario of getting like certain, I think it was like a blues group, like a band, and there was like a lot of them starting like smoking, and so it was kind of talking about how could you get them to stop smoking. And it kind of touched on like this person, this health educator, went through all the steps to kind of figure out how to get them to stop smoking. So I'm botching a little bit because I can't remember everything, but something along the lines of like, let's see, in the beginning, she made brochures and flyers and all those things to make sure they could overcome the perceived, there's just some like susceptibility. So like she gave them flyers and brochures to kind of educate them about why is it dangerous to smoke, and then she brought someone in that had smoked, and so they could see the benefits of not smoking because she was able to live longer. So I think just kind of that is like you kind of plan your intervention through those steps and getting them to have as much knowledge so that they can make the choices themselves and their doubts or attitudes or what they think they can and can't do. I don't know if that made sense at all.
No, that's good. That was great.
Yeah. The susceptibility is kind of like one's belief of getting a condition. So like with smoking, it would be like, okay, the belief of maybe getting lung cancer or something like that. So kind of through education, right? Is that kind of what you're talking about, Maddie?
Yeah.
Also, I read that the biggest, the most influential factor, like stopping people from changing, is the perceived barriers. So I think before you can even like do anything, you should talk to your population and ask them, okay, like what is keeping you from changing this behavior? Because if you don't do that, you'll just like do something and they won't respond. Like there's an example in this PowerPoint of like trying to get musicians to quit smoking, and so the health promoters just made a bunch of flyers and stuff about the dangers of smoking, and nobody even tried to quit because what they didn't realize was that the barriers to not smoking were actually like lack of insurance and like there's a bunch of like social benefits to smoking, and they didn't have time. So like they just totally plan their programs towards the wrong. That's important too.
Yeah. So it kind of goes along like what Maddie was saying. Yeah, it's great. Mm-hmm. Anybody else on that one? All right.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so the next part is a scenario discussion. Underage youth get tattoos either to rebel against their parents or to be accepted by peers. As a health educator, you have to put aside your own personal feelings about the circumstances in order to work with the target population. Read and discuss the following quote. Peer and parental influences compete and often conflict. As youth approach early adulthood, they decide upon ways they wish to present themselves to others and count the costs of doing so by gauging the reactions they get. Attendant to this process as psychosocial risks and rewards, for example, the choice between acceptance by peers and rejection by parents, and other authority figure factors, into the decision-making process for behavioral in general. We imagine this to be more consequential when individuals contemplate getting something as permanent as a tattoo. And then key discussion point, what is the behavior behind tattooing?
I guess if it's going to the chart, it's kind of like the perceived benefits if you're like a youth, because like they were saying, you can be kind of cool, or it can probably put you into like a more popular group of friends, or maybe they want attention from their parents, and so they do something kind of rebellious, so maybe they just see it as like a perceived benefit, and they're not necessarily health-wise, but like I was saying, like social factors.
Right, that's perfect. And then kind of like an opposite would be perceived severity. So like if they chose not to get it, then they would have belief about how serious a condition, like how serious it would be, like in the negative, right? So those would be like opposing kind of. So like if they chose to do it, they were perceiving a benefit. If they chose not to, it's perceived severity, right?
Yeah.
Barrier could be like the cost of a tattoo. Maybe they couldn't afford it.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Something that's nature, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Or like the pain, like maybe they didn't actually want to go through all the pain of getting it. It's not comfortable, I think. I don't know, I don't have one, but.
Or maybe they saw somebody that got a tattoo and they got a bad infection or something like that. Just they had a bad reaction to it, and so they're like, I don't know if I want to do that.
And I think with that, like with the perceived benefit as well, like instead of being pressured by your peers, but like I know some employers have a hard time employing someone when they have tattoos, or if you go to work, you have to cover them all up. And sometimes tattoos kind of are seen as negative still in society in some workplaces. So a benefit of not getting a tattoo could be like you don't run into those barriers later in life. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I think another thing too is I don't think a lot of people know about like the serious blood diseases that can come along with tattoos. So I think that if more people were educated about that, that would change their outlook on it a lot too.
Definitely. Scary. I don't want to blood disease. Anybody else on that one? All right. So part 3 is application assignment prep. So read the lesson 8 application assignment instructions together. Open the assignment table. Begin developing interventions for constructs together while each group member saves their own copy. Take advantage of the remaining time to work on the assignment. Help one another by answering questions that might arise.
All right.
So lesson 8 application. Let me pull that up.
So it's just a Word document that we fill in here, kind of.
Mine is refusing to load, so that's great. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Wait, I'm confused. It's in the application,
Yeah, it's lesson 8 application.
but then at the top it says this is an individual assignment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does that just mean we're turning it in individually, or because we're supposed to work on it together? Okay.
I think we work on it together and then we just turn it in. We upload it individually.
Got it.
So we need to do, let's see, so step 1, apply the principles outlined in the health behavioral change framework and the health belief model with adolescents at risk or likelihood of being tattooed. Interested in tattoos or obtaining a tattoo as you complete the health belief model application assignment worksheet. Type your answers directly into this document. Refer back to the intervention table you completed in lesson 3 application as needed. Okay. So does everybody have that pulled up? Okay.
Yeah.
So we're supposed to fill out the box part, right? Underneath number 2.
Mine's not quite pulled up. Hang on.
So we don't do the whole thing together, just the box.
Because number 1, we just describe the health belief model in our own words, and then number 2 is kind of the box that we talk about, right?
So fill out all of number 2 together, and then kind of the 3 and 4. What does it say in the
So our target population are adolescents, right, that are considering a tattoo. Is that kind of our population?
Why is my, sorry you guys, my document's not pulling up.
If you need, we can just send it to you. It's not going to work. Are we only doing the box together, or do we do all of number 2 together?
Well, I think number 2, it says intervention boxes. It kind of gives us a description or definition of what we're supposed to do.
Okay, and so the answers are in the box.
And the answers go in the box. That's how I'm reading it.
Okay.
It says so like for the intervention, it says what individual interventions are you developing to apply the constructs as a health educator?
Got it. Yeah.
And I think we go through each one of those interventions and we try to figure out an intervention or perceived susceptibility for the adolescent group.
Yeah.
Right? Is that how you guys are reading it?
Yeah, I think so.
Any chance anybody would mind copying it and sending it over to me? I cannot get it to pull up for some reason. Is that
we can put it on the discussion board. I can just upload it to that.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Thank you. I don't know why it won't pull up for me. Maybe because I'm live, my computer can't handle that.
No.
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. So, identify the target population. Okay. So then the pursued susceptibility intervention. So like what would we do? Is that what it's saying? Like what do we do for the perceived susceptibility?
Yeah, so that I guess it's what an intervention would be. So that perceived susceptibility, let me just make sure, kind of the degree to which a person feels at risk for a health problem, or so are we thinking that if an adolescent is considering a tattoo, what's the intervention? Like if they might get a blood disease or if they might experience pain or...
Yeah. So here it says the definition is, belief about the chances of experiencing a risk or getting a condition or disease. So it's just kind of what are your, what is the likelihood of that? And so, and then the application says define populations at risk. So kind of everyone's at risk for infection. And it says to personalize risk based on person's characteristics or behavior and make perceived susceptibility more consistent. So I guess like, how could you communicate with a teenager their chances of getting some kind of a condition or disease from getting a tattoo?
So would our intervention for that, for the perceived susceptibility, be like education about the possibility of getting an infection or something? Is that kind of what they're looking for the intervention part?
I'm looking at health educational strategies, like on the interventions table that we did, and it seems like that pretty good.
What was that last part, Landon? Sorry.
I'm looking at the like interventions table we did in like lesson 3 or whatever, and health educational strategy seems to match the perceived susceptibility pretty well.
Okay.
So, yeah, I guess just like, what are the chances of them getting an infection or a disease or, I guess this one's just kind of, like health related, not necessarily like the, I don't know. So I guess just, I don't know if we need like percentages or like the statistics behind it. Or is that like too much? I don't know.
I'm just typing here. So for the intervention for perceived susceptibility, I just put education on infection or disease. And underneath description, I just put describe what the chances are of getting an infection through that education and then the expected impact as a health educator. I was just thinking to inform the adolescent population about those risks. That's kind of...
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you guys were thinking?
Yeah.
I guess.
That sounds good.
Okay.
It was health education.
But I don't know, does anybody have a different type of intervention that they might think about for perceived susceptibility?
Well, also, like, I think if you're thinking about high school students, they're really hard. Like, you can't really tell them to do anything. But if, like, you had, like, a guest speaker come in who had experience with, like, some illness from a tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
Probably it would be a lot more effective if they saw it firsthand.
So I know in the PowerPoint at the one that we're supposed to go over, it kind of talks about how each action is applicable to each little step. And so she said that she brought someone in who's like a relative had died from smoking. And she said she brought that in for the cue to action. So then they were able to like have like a reality check.
Oh, okay, I see.
So I don't know, like that's a really good one, but we could use it for like the cue to action.
Yeah.
If we want to, I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So we'll keep that in mind. So then I think that's fine with the intervention is like health education, and then the description is describe the risks of disease.
Yeah. Like, I think in the description, they want us to be really specific. Like,
okay, like a brochure, a flyer, like those kind of things.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's it.
Okay. This is the 100-point assignment.
Yeah.
Shirts, flyers. What else?
So do we look at perceived severity now?
Sure. Did everyone get like an answer that was good? I don't know.
I mean, I do. Does Michelle need another invite?
Yeah. Was that her that left? Like that? Yeah.
Yes.
She might. Let's see. Where do you do that again? I can't find the little invite person thing when it's live. Control.
Can you just copy the link in that? Is it right?
I don't know. Let's see here. Did anyone just shut us? I guess everyone's dead since mine did. No, we are. Should be able to just jump back in, I think. Okay. Okay, she's gonna try to get back on. Alright.
Okay.
Okay, so the next one, perceived severity.
So our intervention for perceived severity, that's kind of like the seriousness of what they understand of getting a disease.
Yeah, I like maybe we should look up just like a little quick Google search what kind of diseases can happen from like tattoo infections and stuff.
Right.
Let's see.
Well, I think if you get like dirty needles, there's some chance of.
So let's say you can get MRSA, hepatitis B and C.
MRI complications. Interesting. And then says you can kind of get does it say you can get ink poisoning? Is that a real thing? Let's see.
Pretty sure you can get like any blood disease there is.
Yeah, so here it says you can get allergic reactions. Some people can be allergic to dyes that they're not sure they didn't know about. And then yeah, there's infections, and then can get like scar tissue from inflammation, and then yeah, like pretty much any blood-borne disease. And then it said, oh, so yeah, and this is kind of interesting. It says you can have like